Okay, question I did have for you guys, and like I said, I know there was some questions on the trust, and Yossi, I know you are super excited. The amount of like energy that comes through those papers and runs through you, just knowing what you have in your hands is absolutely amazing. So this question, what is one word that you wish to carry with you after this gathering?
Knowledge.
Boom. So Jennifer, do you have a question in particular about the trust?
Yeah, well, just now that I don't have the attorney and I'm going to be going at this on my own. So I've been doing like an ungodly amount of research. Like my brain is so full of things right now. I've got like a stack for this and a stack for that. But my question is like ultimately what would be the process of getting the trust set up and how would I incorporate that into the court case that I already have going on right now? Like just explain a little bit about how that would look.
All right. Well, I'll give you the long of it. The short of it is actually a little bit more tricky. That's it will be a dynamic process. It's going to have to come through organically. Essentially, in 2 to 3 weeks, we can have you set up with your trust, and we can have all of the public side abstracts in place and, make it so that you're in a situation where the next time you correspond with the court, you'll do it it'll be a monologue, essentially, a record correction that the entity, through essentially something that's similar to a corporate disclosure form, right? It would actually prompt the other side to be able to do the same thing, or you'd be requesting that they did at the same time, because you'd be doing your own disclosure form, showing them who you are, who you actually are, and that you've meant to come in. And listen, your whole thing is you meant to come in as this, in this capacity, under with this agency the entire time. You just didn't have your paperwork in order. And what we'll do is, because our initial conversation happened a while ago, we'll just nunc pro tunc the initial oral agreement that this was the way that you wanted to represent yourself moving forward, back to that date. And then we can get into the details of what that looks like, obviously on a private call. But I think we can break it down. We can get you in a situation where the next time you come in, it's as the chairwoman of a board of trustees who is for a trust that shares the same exact name as that all caps name. You're just coming in there in a different capacity now, with a different set of rules, different set of protocols for how you function, how you balance the books, along with, should there be any kind of dispute over it, what that looks like, in what setting, under what jurisdiction, etc. And as long as you have your rule book in place and you study it really well, that's how every time they give you a file number, you cite their file number, but you switch it over and you tell them this is our file number. So it would be something like, if you're corresponding with them and it's case number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you're going to come up with your own variation of those 10 characters. And then you're going to put / our file or my file, and then your number. And then from then on, every time you correspond with them, you're doing it through your number. There are several tricks that you can use during this process to really be able to, it'll really obviate what's going on behind the scenes for you. You'll see it clear as day, because it'll become so easy at some point. Not easy as in you won't have obstacles, but easy as in you'll stand so firm in your foundational principles, and you'll be so tight on your administrative process, your private administrative process, that you'll be able to foreclose on somebody in a heartbeat if you needed to. Right. So you're developing skills through this process. Like I was telling you, if any mother who was ever in a situation where their kids were taken from them for whatever reason needed to fight to get them back, the best mindset that you can have is somebody took the kids on vacation and they're giving me this time to fight this monster.
Okay. So back to when you said about the corporate disclosure form that I would have to give them, and you said something about it prompting them to do the same. Would that be like an automatic thing, or is that still something that I can request from them?
No, you do it first voluntarily, then request it.
Okay.
Be the first one. Be the first one to act whenever possible. Even like you would tell your son as he's growing up. Like, if you're in a situation where you're about to get into a fight, make sure that you throw one punch and that it counts. You know, you don't, I'm not a shotgun approach type of guy. I'm more of I prefer being a sniper, and I advise that everybody get in that mindset. You know, do
So you
what
don't say
works.
let them hit you first so you can call it self-defense?
No. This strategy, it's strategy. You want to set it off. You want to let them know this is a monologue. It's a record correction process. This is the new capacity. This is the agency that I'm coming into as a representative of this capacity as a trustee. And now that the roles are defined, let's have a conversation. And then the first thing that you request is, who am I talking to? One step at a time. Right? It's a grueling road, but one thing that happens is once you're at the top of it, the uphill battle is definitely a lot harder than the coasting down. So there will come a point where it'll feel like coasting. Right now it's uphill. It might be really far uphill, but you'll be strong as hell when you get up to the top. That's for sure.
And when you're speaking for the trust, you have a different energy because it's not for you. So you're acting as a trustee. That's all.
Correct. And you're acting as a trustee, but at the same time, look, if you have protocols in place that say, okay, so there are children in a family, and the family is governed by a family trust, and that trust has protocols in place where in the event of a dispute, or the children are in danger, or the children want to just run away and get away from their parents, whatever, they have a safe place to go. The godparents have already opened their home. There's a room there for them, yada, yada. In a situation like that, when you're communicating with any kind of state entity that thinks it has jurisdiction over that child, you can point out and point to the paperwork that shows that in reality, they do not have jurisdiction. You have affidavits from living flesh, beings capable of signing a signature, not just an electronic signature. Those protocols are in place for a reason. A lot of children, I know that I don't hate on any kind of institution that's been created through pulling on people's heartstrings. And while most of them are nefarious, they do serve a function on some level, because there are a lot of people out there that really shouldn't be raising children, right? And we all know them. We all know of them. And at the same time, if you're the type of person who would get a trust together and commandeer your biological material, well, you are the type of woman that should be raising her children because you went through that process. So it's like the process proves itself. The people whose dreams they see them come into the waking world, it's only because they've done the work. This is the thing that I have against a lot of gurus who are out there telling people how to get free cars and stuff. Is it's like you're better off just go buy a bunch of lottery tickets, and then once you hit the lottery, blow it. Do that a few times if you want a real lesson, right? The hard work is the only way that you get anything, and the hard work, Jennifer, that you're putting into this, it will pay off. It will be reflected. It might not pay. You might not reap from where you sow, so to speak, but it'll pay off. You might help a lot of women in this process. You don't know what your future holds for you, but I'm really happy that you're doing what you're doing. For you, I'm happy for you.
It has been a lot of networking. So I talked to a lady who runs I don't know what kind of organization it is, but it's called Adelaide's, and she does this thing for jail moms, like moms who are put in jail, separated from their kids, CPS involvement, stuff like that. So they're coming at it from that side, to get stories of moms and things that have happened to them, kind of similar. Aside from that, she does this thing called the admin critic, and she goes after the administrative agencies that are oversighting everything. There's just a lot of people that I've been talking to, and like when I say that I've been like reading and learning things, it's been like from 25 different things within a matter of 3 days. Like, it's fucking insane.
The best thing that you can read and learn is just learn about private contracting. That right there is the golden ticket. That's the thing that if you spend a lot of time reading about how to contract, then when you get yourself into a position where you've created a private contract, and that's the thing that you're operating through, and that private contract also points to a contract on the public side that's implied, and then you've taken all of that implied nonsense and reduced it to writing explicitly so that the trust can govern the affairs of all of those entities and any interest associated with them.
Mhm.
That right there is, that is the thing where you'll start to see exponential progress. Otherwise, if you're fighting within the system and the rules that have been laid out in the capacity that you're fighting from, it is a fight. And then you're not just going up that hill, you're like Sisyphus, right? You're pushing a boulder up the hill and it keeps on crushing you every time you get weaker.
That's definitely what it's been feeling like for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how it's designed.
In case anybody was confused, the nunc pro tunc is from backdating, right, Yossi?
Yeah, correct. Latin, essentially now for then.
And can I ask a question further on the what was the backdating? Did I miss that?
Right. So essentially, there are ways where, Janai, say you and I had our first conversation. We had an agreement that we would have that there was an agreement, okay, and that agreement was oral. Now, say 6 months later, we're writing up the paperwork for it. We can backdate it to that oral agreement from our first conversation.
Okay.
That's all it means. And then that means that, for those 6 months, anything that happened during those 6 months were governed under the terms and conditions of the contract that's been backdated.
Great. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Jiggy. Jiggy just said that it will also negate any previous contract when fraud is brought to light.
Correct. Yep. Because essentially, wrong person, got the wrong guy or wrong gal. From there, you just opened up a can of worms. It's a can of worms that they don't want in a public setting. They're not going to bring you on Zoom calls anymore. Not going to be like that.
That would
You
be
don't govern you don't govern your affairs like that. So the way that you govern your affairs is in person with professionals present and somebody to take notes and dictate make sure the entire conversation is recorded and that everybody gets a transcript. And then you go from there through a series of negotiations. And it could be as simple as being not a McDonald's because you don't want private stuff in there. You want it to be. It could be at a park. It could be in a library in one of the reading rooms or something like that.
What do you mean, Jiggy, by court of record? I know they're administrative courts. Like there's a difference between a judicial and an administrative court. But like a court of record, what does that mean?
Well, you're operating in the private, or are you operating under where the clerk is taking the notes on the ship? Are you in the ship?
In an actual courtroom?
Right. Are you? I mean, you can show up on the ship just on paper, right? And you're still in the courtroom technically.
Okay.
So the same thing happens with the body. So a court of record, it's essentially being recorded by the clerk, who's been, that's their number one function essentially. Is that and to deal with the bonds, to disperse the bonds when necessary, to cancel them out, push stuff into the private when no bond is required. So we make sure that for any trustees associated with any of the trusts that we design for people, no bond is ever required and no bond can be imposed on them either through a constructive trust.
Also, you can be in a courtroom and just because you're in a courtroom doesn't mean it's a court of record. There can even be a clerk there. It doesn't mean she's taking notice of everything that's being said. So you want to make sure always that you're for the record. You state that for the record. Is this being recorded? And if it's not being recorded, then you address that. But yeah, you always want to be on record. Otherwise, there's no notations of exactly what's being said. Administrative courts operate on their own. They're there to railroad you through. You're just another car in the train, and they're just trying to get the train through the intersection.
No, I know it.
Yeah, it's better to bring your own independent third party to record everything.
Yeah, if you can bring two witnesses, you bring witnesses for that, and if you can also pay a recorder or have someone be a recorder, but you can have people show up, and when you notify the court that you have your own recorder there, things tend to change.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like the mediation, the ADR type thing, and having like my own people as witnesses and somebody to record it.
Correct. You have to realize that the court always seeks its jurisdiction. You can be up there and you can be talking for hours. Judge can fall asleep up at the podium. It doesn't matter. As soon as you say anything that requires the court to step in and say, well, that's our jurisdiction right there, now you've caught their attention. right? So what we do is we just bat it outside of their jurisdiction, as long as you have protocols set up that wouldn't bring anything in their jurisdiction, because you've already got an alternative way of settling everything, and your approach is settlement. You're never going in there, looking to go at somebody's jugular. You just want to settle things peacefully. Now, from that space, as long as you go in the right capacity as a private individual who's already, jotted down and signed off on all of how they govern their life, and that contract that you have, for certain that it supersedes their nonsense that they would think, governed your affairs.
Yeah.
As long as you can be like that and stand in your square, you're good to go.
They also don't like it when you ask for the accounting.
Yeah.
No, you don't ask for the accounting. What you do is you ask for the accounting, but you do it on record through, you want to contact the chief records specialist, or some title like that, chief records corrections officer, or records specialist agent within that, whatever 3-letter agency you're corresponding with, because that's the person that really can do something with the record correction. But you definitely don't want to ever challenge anything in an open court.
Yeah. So sorry.
You're not challenging it by asking for it. Because you need the accounting so you can make sure that your accounting is correct, or so you can process your own financial affairs.
So there's a couple ways I've been looking at doing that. Like, of course, asking them outright for like an accounting of like everything since I came to Michigan. But then I also looked at the Secretary of State website, and I actually found that there is like a UCC lien in my name.
Right. So the one thing that you can't do is you don't want to start messing around with securities, because of the way that when they're created. Here's the thing: you make sure to put everybody on notice up the chain, right? But it is a monologue. This is not something that's a dialogue, and it's not something that you can use you can't put a lien on anything without first foreclosing on it or getting some kind of judgment to that effect, right? And you can't retrieve abandoned securities unless you do the same. You have to prove that the debt was valid. So you have to get your private administrative process real airtight. And then if you are corresponding with them, do it through paperwork.
Okay.
Always through paperwork. Never ask them anything.
Yeah, all of this, the Title 40 fraud, everything is just very interesting, because like I said, I've been learning so much. Like, I found out that they open up an FSP account in your name or your children's names that like you don't even know about.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And I'm really glad that I've been networking and getting in touch with people that are going through similar and that are also fighting the good fight in this. And I really hope we bring these motherfuckers down.
Well, it's not so much about bringing them down. It's about removing yourself from their.
On my small scale of things, yes. But in the grand scheme of things, I would really like for the system to have like a death.
Yeah, but that is what happens. And I think the consensus might even be here is that, running a culture that is more centered and more aligned with our values, running that concurrent and parallel to the culture that's falling apart, right? And we know all civilizations crumble under their own weight, most of them because they can't get food into the cities and they devoid their landscape. And that just keeps happening over and over and over again. This one's just much more information and tech based. So the collapse is going to be a lot harder. And I sometimes feel like we're in a space where we're in such a holding pattern that we actually could tip the scales. And while the system, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really want to see a violent collapse like that. I would much rather that we built something up to that was strong as a support system for people. I don't like to see anybody suffer.
I personally don't see it collapse. I mean, I think there'll be a collapse of the federal government. I think the state government will revert, and then some sort of federal or a larger government will replace what collapses. But the majority of the people don't know what we're talking about. They don't know they don't know the law. They don't know their inherent abilities. They don't know who they are. They don't know why the government has authority over them. And so they can't even get into the realms that we're talking about. And so if it all collapses, then that's just going to have a shit show surrounding us. I think I said in another call, it's like, I don't think badges need to go away. It's just that badge doesn't apply to me. There are people in this world that need a badge to a boogeyman with a badge to not harm other people. And so if you're going at it that we're at war with them, now you're a combatant. Now they can just take military jurisdiction over you because now you're treated as a prisoner of war, just like the citizens. You have to remain in honor. You have to be respectful on the field of battle, quote unquote. You can't leave or you forfeit. And so we're not trying to tear it down, because if we did that, we'd be in a whole world of mess, and then we'd have to educate a bunch of people who are programmed by this system. So it's coexistence. Like let it be, let it do its thing. But it's like the Amish, like it doesn't apply here. Doesn't apply here.
Right, Build Back Better.
Yeah, and the financial stuff is every time you get a charge, that's a new security, that's a new bond. Every time you go to school, you get a diploma, that's a bond. Every time you file out an application, that's a new security instrument. Every time you go to the military, security instrument, and those all go into onto the security market in mutual funds, and they're used as collateral, traded on the market by the institution. That's their creation, and like you can claim some of your securities, but like really what you're doing is you're settling the accounting. That's all it is. It's banking. So if we just learn how to settle the accounting, we're discharging the debt, because there is no debt, and all debts are the responsibility of the United States Treasury. So they're not even your responsibility. And so you're just settling the debts in accordance with the rules that they have set in proper standing, because you know who you are. So you can remove that war, that fighting, that destruction. Like I get the anger. I mean, I've chewed a judge's ass in the custody battle in myself. I mean,
I'm quite ashamed today, considering so a while back I had ordered the CDs, the audio recordings of the last 3 hearings in my divorce. And today I've been listening to those. So like, I shit you not, when the judge started talking at the very end of the divorce, he said that the only thing that I said that he agreed with was that I didn't want the government in my life. And then he basically turned around and said, fuck you, I'm the government, I'm in your life. So yeah, I've got some anger with them and the system and how wrong and violated I feel.
Well, but the thing to realize and to recognize there is he is absolutely correct, because in that case, in that instance, you're identifying and you're there appearing as a U.S. citizen, and therefore you have contractually agreed and consented to be administered and administrated by that official. Like you are.
Yeah, I mean, you're an employee. You're essentially an employee who did something wrong on the job, and there's an insurance contract there, and he's just making sure that they get paid. That's all.
Right. Yeah, as far as they're concerned, you're a cow in their farm.
You're just a cow. Yep, you're a cow who got off the ranch for a minute, and they might need to pull out a bond on you. That's all.
You're tagged and branded, and you forgot.
Yep. And you'll keep getting those same results within that. No matter how much you read, you can read for lifetimes, and you can absorb tons of information. You could become a guru in plenty different disciplines. Study the UCC for 10 lifetimes and memorize it. Do whatever it is that you feel and not get anywhere. That is how the system's designed. It's so that it's a big hamster wheel. You're going to keep on running. So best to just jump off the hamster wheel. No need to do something to the hamster wheel. Hamster wheel is going to keep going. Just live a good life. Live a great life.
There's like 3,000 over 3,000 codes in place currently, and more every day.
Yeah, Yeah. You don't need to be studying all those codes. Essentially, look, codes will pop up where there will be times where you need to utilize certain codes in order to be able to maybe defend yourself or go on the offensive. But no need to memorize them. No need to pour through stuff.
What's more powerful than codes really is case law, because once there's a judge's opinion on record, that applies to all cases dealing with that record and must be considered. And so, like, Henkel versus Hale is one of the big cases that people use in the movement. And it's a powerful case. You know, like one of the things in that case says that a private man does not have to pay fees to challenge the court. Like you don't have to pay fees to file things. You know,
Right. That's why you can file in forma pauperis, is because of that case.
right.
Right. So that is the thing that opens up that loophole where it allows you to, you know, especially if you keep that public side indigent and you just operate through the private, then you can go into and you can file, because essentially what you're doing though, they always trick you, brother, because it's not necessarily free. It's more like you're just deferring payment until the end. That's all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know that's what they want to do, but I do know cases where there are no fees. They're all, you know, everything gets, or
Oh
they
yeah.
pay them front and they get refunded.
Exactly.
They'll try to do
Yep.
things like, okay, we're going to dismiss the case, but we're going to keep your bond. And you're like, no, the case is dismissed. There was no bond. That you need to return that to me. What are you talking about? Why are you trying to steal from me?
Yo, yeah.
And
No, but unless you call them on it, I mean, what can you expect?
that's why you need to, that's why knowing some of the codes and because we're playing multidimensional chess, and that's
Mhm.
why knowing the UCC, the common law, understanding the
Yeah.
hierarchy of law and what jurisdiction you're operating in, you know, those can be very powerful tools. But like you said, you can study things for a lifetime and barely gain actionable tools by studying that realm. So
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, with anytime you're operating in the private, you'll always make sure that, you know, you have some kind of clause or provision in your governing document that'll essentially say that this is governed by common law and or the state that I'm claiming right now, whichever is more preferable and more advantageous to the interest of the trust. And you know, something very simple like that puts you into a space where all of that Supreme Court case law, it all applies and you can leverage all of it. And that's something that's very worth pouring through. But again, don't get sidetracked on things. And it's always good to approach things with, you know, like Jiggy said, with respect and a little bit of humility, because we are dealing in a world that we didn't create.
yeah, always, it's a good tactic to play the affable idiot. Now, forgive me, Your Honor, I may have this misunderstood, but to my understanding, your code,
Correct.
and to my understanding, that means that doesn't really apply here. And actually, you're violating. It seems to me that that's a violation of my inherent rights through this statute or this principle of law. So, I mean, like I said, I know I have a lot of questions, Your Honor. Please bear with me, but it seems that this is the case.
Exactly. And from what I glean from this, that, or the other, shouldn't this be this way? And isn't that way? Right? Not so much you're doing this, or never accuse anybody of anything if you can help it. You know, and always use words like glean. I glean from this information that I'm reading. You
Yeah.
know, this way it leaves it open to interpretation. If you're ever representing yourself in any kind of pro se capacity, you want to make sure that you can always call in a legal advisor, a court appointed attorney, just to translate for you, just so that they're there so that they can define words for you, and
Yeah.
you can ask them as many words as you need to ask them. Just make sure that you're clear, because they will use language to confuse you.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I will, if I'm in a position where I can go after qualified immunity or go after, like, there's people that have gotten bar cards and gotten judges off the bench. So if that opportunity presents itself and these people are abusing their authority and not following their codes, I would absolutely hold their feet to the fire.
Well, if you're going after qualified immunity, just make sure that whomever you're doing it with, if they are some kind of policy officer, that you've they're already on the Brady list, essentially. You don't want to go down, you don't want to start messing with the brotherhood without without some kind of protection, or at least documentation.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if you're
That
abusing your authority, I'm coming after you if I can. I mean, and with the attorneys and judges, you can go after their bonds. You know, they're bonded,
but only
but you know,
you'd have to
and
put the Constitution on record, brother.
you can also flip the case. The attorney, the prosecuting attorney, like they're expected to win their case. They're expected to get the charge confirmed, and if they don't, then that goes against their bond.
Right. That is why they're bonded. Interestingly enough, it used to be called liar bonds, and I think there still might be some kind of a variation on that, but essentially which would indemnify the Esquire from any lies that they would commit or tell in order to be able to close one of those cases out.
Well, they're
Wild.
they're allowed to lie and deceive in court, and one of the legal definitions of lie is to exist.
Yeah.
So what we think lie means, like I said, caveat emptor, buyer beware, let he who will be deceived be deceived. Court interaction is just a banking negotiation, and it's a contractual transaction, and they're legally allowed to lie and deceive.
Yeah. That goes for any kind of statutory entity, whether it's the public school system or a hospital, anything.
So quick
Pretty
question.
much works the same way. Yeah.
Talking about judges and going after them and stuff. So, like, I think that I do have a very clear argument with the judge that's on my case, because he's put an order in place that specifically says that I can't speak to my children disparagingly about the public education system. And that is a clear violation of the First Amendment right. So if I was...
Have you pulled his oath?
I've looked at the judge's oath online. I haven't pulled anything about his specifically.
So judge's oath, hire a handwriting analysis expert and a constitutional law professor. Even if it's just, it'll probably be something to the tune of $500 for both of them. Have both of them sign an affidavit that you already write out, attesting to whether or not that oath is valid. Compare it to whatever's oath he was supposed to be taking and what one of those oaths would look like, and then juxtapose both of those. Hypothetically, again, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm saying if you were to want to go down that case, that's how you would start getting your paperwork in order.
Can you explain that a little bit more about? So you said that I'd have to get a handwriting expert and a constitutional expert, but how would I get the judge's oath, like the actual one that he did?
Public record.
Yeah, FOIA request.
And when you do that, then they know you mean business, and they also know that you know more than the average layman, and they start to change their behavior and treat you differently because they know you're not fucking around.
Who would I send the FOIA request to, though, for the judge's oath?
Oh, it should just be right into the county courthouse.
The clerk, the county clerk.
Yeah, send it right to the clerk. Yeah, get that FOIA request out. They know you mean business.
That's a lot more I need to look into.
Yeah, the great thing about the way that the system's been designed is that the same artifice that they use, that's the word that I was looking for, the scheme, that constructive trust is created in order to be able to securitize and trade those bonds. That same scheme can be reversed if you just simply express that through documentation and a declaration on the record. That scheme is then transformed. And as long as you follow it through with the correct paperwork in a timely manner, you can actually appoint all of them in their proper capacity as trustees, you as the grantor, then as the beneficiary as well. But you're not asking for money or debt in order to settle. What you're asking for is simply to discharge the bonds. And that's your settlement, balancing the books. That same template that I just laid out can be applied, and obviously it's different in every case. And we can drill into the details and all the minutia. But that same template right there can be applied to pretty much any case where there are bonds that are created, which are 99% of the cases that would be brought into a courtroom, if not 100%.
Yeah, the whole scheme is a reverse trust scam. They've tricked us to be the surety. And like you said, when they're the trustee and being able to settle matters and discharge debt, that is part of the benefits of being the beneficiary. Like, that is the whole thing. Is there is no money. We accept to discharge all debts dollar for dollar, and in exchange, you are they're claiming the citizen as like an employee, and you're exchanging your constitutional protections when you're doing that. But that trust, the beneficiary is allowed to discharge the debt, and you can overpay, and I mean, there's other things you can do where you do get money. But the main thing is getting the case settled and not being
Yeah, get it settled. Secure your body first, right?
Right.
Get it settled. Then, if you want to get fancy, 6 months later, write a note. Say, hey, listen, I know there were QSIP numbers that were attached to each one of those bonds, and I'm just trying to make sure there's no abandoned securities floating around out there. Because of the nature of what I'm talking to you about right now, securities, by default, this is confidential, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be contacting you, the principal. Rather, I would contact you through your agent, right? And if you approach them like that, you get the QSIP numbers. You can then go there are many ways of retrieving those bonds. Again, don't try to get a check from the U.S. Treasury. If anything, try to load up that public side with as many credits as possible, and then create a system on the private side with a nice fine pour over will would essentially say all interest that's left over on the public side upon my death is conveyed into the trust, and sets off any of the debts that I have, including any prolonged hospital stays, yada yada. And then from that point, you just set yourself and your ancestors up.
You're
Yeah.
claiming your interest, not.
Yeah.
And then often there's also times where you'll say with other security instruments, the principal, the gift, the government, the interest. So you're giving them concessions for processing the security and forwarding your interest to the proper channels. And the word gift, that means gambit, intrafallopian transfer. So that the gambit is the whole thing. Intrafallopian, we're dealing with birthing again. Transfer. So it's not like a donation. You're actually doing a legal transfer.
So it sounds to me like the actual technical definition would point more toward the gambit being the umbilical cord and the gift being the child.
Well, gambit means to run the gambit, which means all possible answers. That's the circle, right? That's the self-eating snake. That's the cabal. So gambit is the totality, right? Whole thing. Intrafallopian transfer. But yeah, I mean, you could see it that way, that it's with the umbilical cord, but the intrafallopian suggests that it's internal.
Why? Because that is how all energy is transferred and transmitted. I mean, these transmitting utilities that have been created for us to operate in this world of commerce, it is actually, while we do see it as artificial, it is actually very natural and very organic that such a process would be created. This isn't something that's just completely dead. There are a lot of good elements to it. And I think what's lacking most is a ethical standard in the way that we conduct ourselves, and a culture that really celebrates life. We're so tuned into death and killing and all that stuff. We've become numb to it. So yeah, I think there are different answers.
That's what the system is. The system's a simulation of life that's actually based in death.
Yeah. Yeah, you're based on universal law, and entropy is the fingerprint of entropy is all over the thing, right? And at the same time, so is life, and that they both go hand in hand. Yeah. Interfallopian, snake eating its head.
Right, and that's why it works so well, because it mimics it so much that we think we're living, but we're really civilly dead.
Right. But again, we embrace that paradox, right? Because something that's civilly dead, how can a living anything be held as surety for that thing?
Right. How can I be words on paper? I can't. The United States itself only exists as words on paper inside of the District of Columbia.
Yet that union existed before the documentation of it, right? So that's the paradox right there. Is that the thing itself always exists. It's just the documentation is the thing that we tend to construe as the thing. And we, that's where all the confusion starts. Identification is the trap, ultimately.
Yeah, fusion. Is a trick, and we fuse together. So we've been conned, and then we fuse with this dead system. And yeah, that's what it's based on, is confusion. And even, I mean, it can be even argued that the Constitution doesn't apply to us. I wasn't a party to it. Where's my John Hancock? I don't have a signature on there. My sign of nature has nothing to do with that.
The only Constitution that I respect actually is the one that's documented with my John Hancock on it. That's the Constitution that I have with my Creator, right? So aside from that, at best, anything can only maybe kind of hit the mark sometimes. Sometimes, right?
Right. And yeah, the constitution, your constitution is your charter. That's your trust charter. That is, constitution is what you're made of. Right. So, so really the only reason to cite constitution is because, first of all, the constitution doesn't grant us anything. It recognizes what we are, and it tells the government what it can't do. So the only reason you're citing the constitution is because the government is violating those rules set against it. It's
Correct,
not
because
about,
it's a firewall at best.
right. It's not about proving that you have these rights. You standing there and speaking the words and claiming your authority and standing in natural law and trust, with the creator outside of their commercial jurisdiction. That's what gives you the rights, or that's what forces them to respect your inherent abilities and not
And you're correct, and your power, right? Because what happens is authority masquerades as power, but it's bought and sold with cash every day. Whereas power and authentic power is something that only comes from within. That
right.
and we are powerful. They are the authorities.
Yeah, right. And like you said, you can flip the script on them pretty quick. You just, hey, I'm the executor here. I don't know what is going on here, but you guys are the trustees. So you guys are acting like you're in charge here, and you're here to administrate it and handle the affairs as the trustee. And I'm giving you directives as the executor here. And so where's the confusion? Seems to be a controversy here.
Right, and if there is a controversy, I'm sure that there's some party C that can remedy it.
Yeah,
And
there's got to be
9 times out of 10, that party C is something like the IRS, which is, it's interesting, all this talk of abolishing the IRS. And I don't think people really even know what the IRS is or what it does. And anytime we've been taught to fear something, it's probably the thing that we should be not tangling with or like getting ourselves involved with on a deep level, but you should at least have some kind of healthy curiosity as to what is the function of this organization that we've been taught to fear. And why is it that whenever we send our records to them, that they seem to clear it up within days, whereas we're stonewalled when we just send it to the authority figure.
right. Well, the IRS is they are one of the organizations that actually adhere to the codes. Like they will serve you pretty well if you know what you're doing, and they're a collection agency. They're not a department. They're not a department of the United States. They're a department of the IMF, and they can go after the United States just as much as they can go after you.
That's why I don't get how aside from a treaty that could separate the United States from the IMF, I don't see how this quote unquote abolishing of the IRS is something that's attainable, tenable, or even something that we should be even considering as something that could be helpful.
Yeah. If you want to abolish something, let's start with the Federal Reserve and the UN.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen when they go to inspect Fort Knox. They're going to find out that there's a lot of missing bars, and
That's been
right,
going
and when they do that, the price of gold's going to pop through the roof. Dollar's going to tank. Then it could expose something within the soft underbelly of the beast. And we obviously, as with all of this stuff, it's all based on problem reaction solution. So they already have the solution in the pipeline. So any problem that's fed to us, we're going to see that solution, and it will be designed in such a way where we'll celebrate it and the people will usher it in. By popular demand, it's coming. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, that's already happened. As far, for me, it's like anything you're seeing, the world is a stage, and the stage is full of actors, and that's why it's called political theater, and that's why it's the theater of war. Everything you're seeing in political arena is kayfabe. It's professional wrestling. It's the WWF. It's scripted. Donald Trump and Elon, this is all, they're just overseeing the bankruptcy of the United States, and they're trying to paint it as if they're going back to do this or fighting for the republic, but really they're just administrating over the bankruptcy as trustees, and they're masking it so that people don't lose their shit, and they can try to usher people into a new chute, to a whole different slaughterhouse.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's ironic that nationalists would be quote unquote nationalists would be brought in to usher in like some kind of unified one world governing force. Ironic, but again, everything is the inverse of what we see. When we're presented with one thing, consider the inverse is the truth.
Right. I mean, that's a mask. It's he's using those terms, nationalist, to so the most radical, quote unquote, in their eyes or their definition, but the most principled conservative, like constitutionalist, voluntarist, liberty based people will kind of back off. That's why they're using those terms, because they want you to think that we're going back into like closing our borders and doing this, but really, once like I said, the United States, DC, District of Columbia, it's not the United States of America. It's a corporate organization that's owned by like 5 families. It was sold to 5 families in 1926 or 25. And so the majority of people they don't understand this at all. You talk to people about this and they lose their mind and they say you're crazy. They call you uneducated, say that you're not informed. And you're just like, okay, well then you tell me what the Organic Act of 1871 did.
Correct. Yep. And then, if you point out that this by default means that, any good corporate governing agency knows you put insurance contracts on all of your employees, and they have. And it's ironic that once people see these insurance contracts, that they think they have some kind of stake in them, or that they can pull some kind of value out of them. We didn't create those. None of the stuff we created. We have nothing to do with it.
And it makes it tricky too, because we get passionate and we get emotional and angry about things, and we're like, well, that's treason. But the truth is, the legal fact is it's not treason, because they're operating under a foreign federal constitution that is a replacement for the original constitution. And so they have permission to do what they're doing through their corporate structure, because they're not a public government. They're a private corporation disguised as a public entity.
Yep. And you can prove it if you just look at habeas corpus itself, comes directly from the Magna Carta,
Yeah. Well, and then even
word for word.
Even the Magna Carta, it's like, because the Constitution is an extension of the Magna Carta, but you've got the Treaty of 1213, which precedes 1215, which is when the Magna Carta was signed. And so all of England's territories and all of England's future territories were already ceded to the Vatican in exchange for King John's ability to go to heaven. So the United States is a colony of England. So if you really go to the records, the Vatican and the Pope have prior claim to the United States.
Yep, first in line, first paid.
Right. So it's, the more you dig, the crazier it gets. The only way to get out of it is to understand their law and their rules and their subversions, and then claim yourself as the living being, the living man, woman under the Creator, because
through private contracting,
nothing supersedes that. And then you operate as a business, and you follow you use the transmitting utilities, and you use them as best you can to your advantages, while keeping your separation between you, the church. Your body is the church. So that's the separation between church and state. These institutions called churches aren't the churches. They're just another form of state. That's a ministry, and a state is ad ministry nation. But really, your body is the church. The church is no brick and mortar building, and there's no man between you and God. And so the separation of church and state is the separation from the living man and the corporate entity. And that's where all the power lies.
That is where all the power lies, right there at the tip of the nose, where that breath meets the nervous system.
Yeah, they teach you that you're not enough. You need God, or you need the protection of a government, which is God, which is guns, oil, and drugs, right? And God we trust. So you need some sort of external God, because you're not enough. They have the power over you, and you have to follow their rules. But really, you've always been enough, and you always have had the power. The power emits from within you, not without, upside down and inside out.
Yeah,
It's inverted and reversed.
Resonance, brother.
So once we understand that, it's just a matter of understanding how to express ourselves properly so that they can recognize, recognize, and hear us and acknowledge us, and also adhere to the rules that they've formed to, because they've got their gods, and their gods aren't as powerful as the Almighty Creator.
That's right. And may the ripples from this conversation cause a tidal wave, if that be in the best interest of all things.
Absolutely. I mean, you get enough people who understand this, then the system doesn't need to stay in place. You get enough people understanding. If I hurt someone else, I'm hurting myself. Then the boogeymen with badges kind of go away. I'm one that I don't necessarily think that a utopia type existence like that is possible. I think that I think it's unlikely that we're going to have a massive swing where all of a sudden everyone agrees. I think there are, I think first of all that we're all different quality of beings, and we all have different genetics. And there's people and beings here that they feel safe, and they feel safe by being, they're sheep and they need a shepherd, and that's okay. But there's other people who are, we're the lion, or we're the wolf, we're the tiger. We don't need protection. We protect our own. We have our own. We're the bear. We have our own group, and we don't need you to take care of us. Besides, you don't do a very good job.
It's funny you say that, because one of the things I was thinking about today is like, a man, and again, I can only speak about being a man because I'm in a man suit, but a man that can't see his shadow won't be able to integrate that shadow. And often what I found about my shadow is I'm an apex predator in that space, and it's something that has really brought a lot of humility to me in the light that I shine, right? Because in that light space, I can't be that. I have to modulate that thing. But the fact that it's there, and I know it's there, and I know how to work with it, makes me very dangerous, right? So that danger right there is something that we all have to be aware of. And if we could find it within ourselves, that has a lot to do with healing and being healed, or resonating as healed, is just coming to terms with what we are not.
Right. Well, with what you just said, I saw, you being, so it's like being at a negotiation and having a sniper with a laser sight 6 clicks out, and you're negotiating, and the guy tries to pull a power move on you, and you signal the sniper, and then all of a sudden there's a laser on their chest, and you go, see that?
Exactly. No, exactly. I mean, yep. Walk softly, carry a big stick.
Right. That's my stick right there, buddy.
Yep, that's right. Or a laser beam. Yeah, exactly. Whatever's necessary to get the job done.
Yeah, and these officials, these agents, they will, no amount of standing in law will supersede or nullify an agent's want for authority. This is why you don't argue law on the side of the street, because the police officer thinks he has authority, right? And so they don't have the knowledge. And
they do, right? They They do, because they can take control of your body through force. And again, that's not power. They don't have power. They do have authority, though.
Right. But they can be held. You get someone, an officer, doing the wrong thing, then that can be a hefty payday. And also you can remove that badge, and so other people don't have to do that. And I would say that that's actually our duty. If we do interact with an agent that is abusing its power and its authority and harming people, it's our duty, if we interact with them, to remove them from the playing field. And
Correct,
that's by getting their badge, and then stuff like that happens. You go after their bond. No police department's going to hire them. Their career's over.
Yeah. But that is also why you want to make sure that they're on the Brady list, so that there's eyes on them during that process. Yeah, there are all kinds of ins and outs, but when you want to get aggressive, there are ways of getting aggressive. Just be wary, right? The boomerang energy is really strong whenever you're dealing with the beast.
Yeah, and overt, it's, you don't have to be overtly fierce and threatening and aggressive that way. It's usually the calm sniper, and you don't even have to take them out. You just let them know, like, they won't even, you know, and that's what they prefer, is for the trigger not to be pulled. And once you put them on notice, they will back off, because like if it becomes a spectacle, now you've got 100,000, 10,000, an entire city or county asking questions of, well, why is this? This doesn't seem, this isn't what I know. You like, this seems upside down. Why are the roles reversed? So they don't want that. They want it to be, okay, we see, okay, we concede, you know.
Exactly. This is why the sniper approach, you know, if you're ever called into a courtroom, don't answer when they say, you know, when they call your name, just Your Honor, can I approach the bench? And 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to approach the bench, and then just say below the volume that anyone else in the court could possibly hear, so that you're having a private conversation. The information that I'm about to disclose could compromise the revenue stream of the court, and or, you know, at worst, the integrity of this court could come into question. Can we please meet in chambers? And then watch how things go from there, because that's your sniper approach.
I prefer to do that from outside of the deck. I don't go on to the
No,
ship.
of course you want to do it on paper, of course,
Well,
right? But
no, I
if you
mean,
are ever summoned,
right, but I'm saying, in that case, I wouldn't proceed onto the through the swinging gates. I wouldn't cross onto the ship. I wouldn't approach the bench. I would announce I'm here on special appearance, and I would ask maybe for a meeting in the private quarters, due to sensitive information. You know, if that's, you know, how you want to
yeah,
proceed. But
that probably that is the more ideal way, brother.
yeah,
Absolutely.
because once you're on their ship, they can make you walk the plank. You've given up jurisdiction. You're in their realm.
Still, 9 times out of 10, you say that very concisely, and it doesn't matter if you're on the plank or not. You know, they will bring you back into their chambers to have a conversation.
Yeah, I just,
You know, they
like,
still have to adjudicate. And if you let them know that the thing that you're about to talk about is not for public consumption, that right there shows responsibility, right?
Right.
So even if you are on the plank, you've just nullified any reason why you can't be treated as, you know, able-bodied adult capable of managing their own affairs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've challenged a few judges, and I didn't have the knowledge I have now, and so I really put myself in the risky position, but it worked in the time. But every time I set a judge back on the heels, it's always followed by some sort of 5-minute speech reclaiming the authority of the room.
Right.
They're lecturing the rest of the people.
Unless you're a traveling man, it's ill-advised to put a judge on notice. But if you are a traveling man, there's ways to do it just by the way that you stand, just by the way that you put your hands. That'll let them know you're coming for their head. Aside from that, you know, if you're just coming in there in the if you're coming in there in the public capacity, don't think that you could ever go after a judge's oath or bond without possibly ending up in a jail cell for contempt or worse.
Sure. You say traveling, you're referring to Masonic.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can hold your hand just by the way you stand or put your hand in certain places. Like I'm a brother in distress, and you get favorable treatment.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, or worse, or you know, like we're at war. You know, there are ways that you can stand and things that you can do just to be able to convey that message, so that the conversation and more importantly, the tone of the conversation will shift drastically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big club, and we're not in it.
You ain't in it.
Right.
Well, guys, another illuminating conversation. This one's approaching 3.5 hours. I think we're pretty much averaging like 3 to 4 hours on these conversations on these Saturday nights. These are good talks, guys.
Absolutely.
So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to bring up or bring to the round table here for discussion?
I just think it's interesting that they call themselves traveling men, and the right to travel is highly contested. First of all, that it's called right to travel, you know, be private, move privately in your automobile or conveyance. I just wanted to note that correlation.
Yep. We expect you to note that, brother. That's one of your blessed gifts that we all really appreciate.
Word. Appreciate you guys too.